What's going on, guys? Mira here, back again with another Genshin Impact video, and today I want to talk about Albedo, which is the first 5-star character that we will be getting in update 1.2. So if you've watched the trailer, you will know that Albedo is a one-handed sword user of the Geo element, and he is a support. So before you get your hopes up about DPS Albedo, I just want to say that he is mainly going to be a support, and if you choose to build him a DPS build, it may not work out too well for you guys. So yeah, let's just jump right into it. So some of the things that we are going to be covering in this video will be the weapon options as well as artifact and team composition options. But before that, I just want to go through some of his Ascension materials as well as his skills so that you guys will have a clearer idea of how he is going to be used. So first things first will be the Ascension materials, and he does need the Cecilia as well as the sealed scroll from the Ascension Materials. So if you are planning to pull for him, these are the materials that you will need to prepare. So let's move on to his normal attack. His normal attack performs a 5 rapid strike. It's pretty standard of one-handed sword users, and yeah, there's nothing really too fancy about it, so I will not be covering too much on it. So next we move on to his elemental skill, and before we get into his elemental skill, I just want to say that Albedo is a character that is very focused on his elemental skill, which is really nice for me because I enjoy characters that are more focused on their elemental skill rather than their elemental burst. And there are 2 parts to his elemental skill, so this is where you should be paying attention if you are planning to pull for Albedo. And the first part of his skill, he creates a solar isotoma, and it will deal AoE geo damage when it spawns. So this initial damage will scale off of his attack stats. So we're talking attack percent, and all that kind of good stuff, right? And the second part of his elemental skill, which is the Transient Blossoms, will be the main part of his kit and why he's so useful as a support. So if you take a look here, when enemies within the solar isotoma field take damage, the solar isotoma will generate Transient Blossoms, which deal AoE damage, scaling off of his defense. And Transient Blossoms can only be generated once every 2 seconds. So this is really nice when you put him in a team and you can just press E, deal that initial damage, and then switch out to another character. And basically every 2 seconds that the enemies take damage, they will take additional damage from Transient Blossoms. And the good thing is, it scales off of Albedo's defense, meaning if you want to build him as support, you can just go full defense, and I will be showing you guys how I plan to build him in just a bit. So another thing about his elemental skill is that if you do stand in the middle, it will form a crystallized platform that lifts the character up to a certain height. Only one crystallized platform can exist at a time, and this is the solar isotoma is considered a geo construct. So I am going to be trying him with Zhongli himself, and I kind of see like Albedo as a support for Zhongli, which is also a support. But hey, you know, that's how it is, and I will be trying to build him with Zhongli. So as you can see here, the scaling is pretty good on his elemental skill, and if you do get him to the higher talent levels, like level 8, level 9, he will deal upwards of 150% of his defense. So that is the whole reason why I will be building you know, full defense on him. And the duration is 30 seconds, and the cooldown is only 8 seconds. So you are going to have this on the field 100% of the time. And every 30 seconds, you can just swap back into Albedo, press E, and swap out. So this is a really nice skill, and it makes up like the bulk of Albedo's kit. And yeah, I'm just really excited for this skill. So next we move on to his Elemental Burst, Tectonic Tide. Under Albedo's command, Geocrystals search and burst forth, dealing AoE geo damage in front of him. And if you use his Q in his E radius, 7 Fatal Blossoms will be generated in the field, bursting violently into bloom and dealing AoE geo damage. So if you take a look at the scaling over here, let's just take a look at the level 5 scaling. You are approaching 500% on his initial burst damage, and each of the Fatal Blossom will deal almost 100% of his attack. So this scales with attack and not defense, and that's the weird part. So it kind of makes me think that there will be two different builds that you can go with Albedo, and one of it I'm gonna call the full support build where it focuses on defense, and the other one will be a hybrid build, kind of like where you kind of focus on his elemental burst a little bit more, and his basically the skills that scale a little bit better with offensive stats like attack. So yeah, that's all we have for his skills. And next we move on to his talent ascension. So his talent ascension, he scales off of Ballad, the guide of Ballad. So if you do plan on ascending his talents, this is the book that you should be aiming for. And also, he also requires the sealed spell book, which is gonna be really taxing on your inventory, and you will need to hunt a lot of Sama Churls for all of this, considering that his character ascension and his talent ascension both need the sealed spellbook. So moving on, we go to his passive talents, and this is where it gets really really good. So his first passive talent is that his transient blossoms generated by his E deal 25% more damage to enemies whose HP is below 50%. So we know that his E will last for 30 seconds, and that probably means that it will last for almost the entire duration of a fight if you are going against mini bosses and monsters. And for just bosses, his uptime is 100% anyway, so it doesn't really matter. And having this deal 25% extra damage is just really really nice to have. So his second passive talent would be using his Tectonic Tide, which is Q, increases the elemental mastery of nearby party members by 125 for 10 seconds, and 125 is a lot. So from his talents, you can see that he is going to be a support type character. Whether you build him for his E or his Q, he will be mainly focused on as a support. So next, let's move on to his constellations. So for his constellation 1, transient blossoms generated by Albedo's E regenerate 1.2 energy for Albedo. And I think that's a really nice skill to have, but not a must-have. It does help him regenerate his energy a little bit faster, especially when it regenerates off transient blossoms. And that means that you can use another character to just hit the enemies, and off of that, it will generate energy for Albedo. And for Constellation 2, transient blossoms generated by his E will grant Albedo Fatal Reckoning for 30 seconds. Each stack of Fatal Reckoning increases damage by 30% of Albedo's defense, stacking up to 4 times. Unleashing the Q consumes all stacks of Fatal Reckoning, increasing the damage dealt by not only the initial Tectonic Tide damage, but also the 7 Fatal Blossoms based on the number of stacks consumed. So this will add on to a lot of damage for Albedo, and I kind of think that C2 is really really strong, and it will add a lot of damage to his kit. And if you are pulling for Albedo and you are heavily invested, C2 may be a viable option for you guys. And moving on to C3, it increases his E by 3 levels, nothing special there. Constellation 4 increases plunging attack damage by 30% for active party members within the AoE. So that's gonna be really really interesting, because this is like MiHoYo telling us, hey, this is going to be good with Xiao. And we know Xiao isn't here yet, but we also know that Xiao scales off of plunging attacks, and the bulk of his damage in his Q will be plunging attacks. So if you are getting Xiao, and you are a whale, then C4 might be a good option for you. But honestly, I wouldn't recommend, because C4 is just really really expensive to get. Moving on to C5, it increases his Q by 3 levels. And finally in C6, if active party members within the AoE are protected by a shield created by Crystallize, Solar Isotoma increases their damage by 17%. So this is really nice to have, but for C6, it's totally not worth it. So I wouldn't recommend you getting C6 on Albedo. So next we move on to his weapon options, and for Albedo you want energy recharge on his weapon. So One thing that I can recommend for sure will be the Festering Fang, and that will be available as a event reward in 1.2. So if you do want to build Albedo, you will have to participate in the event and get the Festering Fang. It will be a 4-star sword, and it gives him energy recharge, and also it amplifies his elemental skill damage as well as the elemental crit rate. So it is a really nice weapon to have if you are building Albedo, and I strongly suggest that you get this weapon for him. And if you don't have this weapon, or if you've missed this event, then I can recommend some other energy recharge swords like the Favonius sword or the Sacrificial sword. But I will not say that the Sacrificial sword is good, because you don't need to reset his E, right? There's no point in resetting his E. His uptime is like over like 300%, because 30 seconds on and 8 seconds off. So the Favonius sword will be probably the other weapon of choice that I will recommend if you do not have the Festering Fang. So next we move on to his artifact builds, and for his artifact, there are a couple of artifacts that I do want to try out, and the first one that I am going to try out will be the Archaic Petra and Noblesse Oblige. So similar to Zhongli, we will be building him with the same way. So Archaic Petra is there to increase his Q damage as well as his E, as well as the Transient Blossoms, because I do believe that the Transient Blossoms will still deal additional damage off of his Geo damage bonus. So having that Archaic Petra will be really nice. And the Noblesse Oblige is of course to deal extra damage on his Q, because if you look at his Q over here, the cooldown is 12 seconds and his energy cost is only 40. So most of the time you will have your Q up, unlike, you know, some other characters which is really wonky to recharge their Q on. So this build will be my build of choice, and for timepiece I'm going with defense %, and for the goblet I will go for geo damage bonus, and finally for the circlet I will go for defense. And there are a few variations for the circlet. You can go crit rate or crit damage depending on your preference, but I just like to build defense because that will give me a consistent source of damage on his E. So the next piece of artifact that I will want to try out on Albedo would be the 4-piece Noblesse Oblige. And the reason for that is because if you look at his Q has a really short cooldown of 12 seconds and his energy cost is only 40. So if he is able to regenerate energy, the 4-piece Noblesse will be good on him. Granted that you will be sacrificing some damage from his E if you don't build the Archaic Petra, but this is a good set to build if you want to focus more on your other characters, because the 4-piece Noblesse does give extra damage to your other characters instead of Albedo himself. So next we move on to finally the team comm options. So because Albedo is a support, you can build him with basically every DPS, and he will fit into most teams. And because he's so reliant on his E to deal damage, he is a little bit similar to Fischl in my opinion, where you just press E and then go out, and he will be dealing his damage from the side. However, with that being said, there are some team compositions that I would like to try out, and the first one would be 2 Geo, 2 Pyro for the Elemental Resonance, and this composition would basically focus on raw damage as opposed to elemental reaction damage. So I will want to build Albedo with Zhongli, Diluc, and Bennett. And I understand that this will be a really 5-star intensive team, but you can also replace Diluc with Xingyan if you don't have Diluc. So the next team composition that I would recommend is basically just fitting him into your team. And I know that this sounds ridiculous, but hear me out. Albedo will be a character that, you know, supports from the side, and it doesn't really matter who you build him with. He will be able to deal damage because he scales off of defense and not elemental reactions or anything. And that is really nice because that means that you can fit him into any team. And for me, I will be putting him into my team to test him out. So right now I'm using Jean, Diluc, Child, and Diona, and I will kind of just replace Jean for a bit with Albedo and see how it goes. But I'm pretty sure it will go well because Albedo is just such a standalone character in my opinion. And the only pairing that is good for him will be the Geo pairing, and also Zhongli for the Geo resonance on his E. So other than Zhongli, there isn't really that much synergy that I will recommend. You can just basically put him into your team as a support DPS. So yeah, that is all for his team composition. So I hope this guide has been helpful in terms of this helping you decide if you should pull for Albedo. I am definitely hyped for Albedo. In fact, I am more hyped for Albedo than Ganyu. And if you guys want to see me pull for Albedo and also build him, make sure you are subscribed to the channel and also join my Discord so that you don't miss me when I go live as we pull for Albedo. So yeah, that's all I have for you guys for today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace!